Good morning, everyone. Do you have a seat? Please do sit down. Very good morning, and let me add my welcome to Francis. My name is Aëlla. I'm a member of the church family here, and it's lovely to see you, and very happy Easter to you. Now, we have a time-honored tradition on a Sunday like this where we always start with a bit of a warm-up. And so what we're going to do is we're going to have an Easter quiz. Okay, so Gavin's got it here. It should come up. At least the title should come up in a moment. And let me just explain as it's coming up. It's going to be a quiz, basically children versus adults. That is 0 to 17s, young people, not kids, young people, 0 to 17s, and then 18s to, the other end, okay? So, and the quiz is simply called, Who Can You See? And I'm going to start with children. You're going to see an image, but it's very small. And I want you to tell me who it is, okay? It's very easy. All right, Gavin, let's go for our first image. Sensitive on the button, we don't want to give it away. Who do you see? 0 to 17-year-olds. If you know who this character is, that's not a good start. No one, no. Maybe I made it too difficult. Really? Nobody knows. Okay, do any of the adults know? Oh, my word. What? Yes, Amelia, my daughter. Not planted. From Despicable Me, do you know her name? Nor do I. Let's look. Next one. Lucy Wilde from Despicable Me. No. Okay, well, it's a classic. You need to watch it if you haven't seen it. Okay, adults, turn. Gavin. Who do you see, adults? Eyesight? Oh, Einstein! Right, let's have a look. Yes! Albert, I make that 2-0 to the adults, which is not great. Okay, I can't promise the next one is going to be any easier. Okay, children, this is for you. Okay. Who do you see? Who do you see? A clue. You want a clue? Yeah. No, Charlie in the Chocolate Factory. Augustus, you say Augustus? Yes, let's have a look. Who is it? It is! It's Augustus Gloop! From Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. That's the second film you need to go home and watch this afternoon to have your film and history education. Right, thank you so much. Now, next one for the adults. Who do you see? Adults. Can you see? Who can you see? You have 5 seconds. 4, 3, 2, 1. Nobody? What? Matilda? Let's see if it's Matilda. Queen Elizabeth. Okay, all right, so because we're not doing terribly well, I'm going to make it a lot easier for you. I want you to read this description. I'm going to read it out loud. This next description. Tell me who it is, okay? He lives in the USA, has blondish hair, likes to wear red, acts like a world superhero, has had 2 seasons and may have a 3rd. Who is it? Donald Trump? No, it's... Well. Mr. Incredible. I think Crash and Burned about sums it up. Sometimes we think we know who someone is, and then we get a bit of a shock when we see who they really are, and we realize they are actually someone quite different, or they are so much bigger than we ever imagined they were to start with. They're beyond our expectations. Now, of course, it doesn't matter with Augustus Gloop or, Albert Upwell, arguably, but it doesn't matter with Mr. Incredible. But it does matter, it did matter on that very first Easter morning for a lady called Mary Magdalene, because when she went to the tomb, she saw something and heard something that absolutely blew her mind. And it was such a moment that it completely changed her sadness to joy, and it even turned death itself into life. Now, it's very good that we're here this morning. When she met Jesus, those things happened, but we have maybe never really thought about that. But it is good to be here, because all of us, if we're honest with ourselves, are always seeking joy, not sadness. We're naturally seeking life, not death, and a hope. And hope is so difficult to find in our world at the moment. And could it be that actually Jesus is far bigger than we ever imagined, than we ever expected? And the writer of the gospel that we're about to read, John, wrote it so that people like you and I, everyday people, can discover for ourselves who Jesus actually is. So we're going to enter into the Easter story now. Isaac's going to come and read. We're going to do it in two parts. Read our first part, and then I'll come back up. Thanks, Isaac. Do grab a Bible, by the way. It's on page 1089. Thanks, Isaac, very much indeed. Do just keep that open for a moment. So the scene is, it's very early, still dark on that very first Easter morning. And Mary goes to Jesus' tomb. She expects, of course, to see the tomb closed. The big stone had been rolled across the front. And instead, and I assume therefore a body inside, instead she gets this enormous shock because the stone has been completely rolled away. And running and telling Peter and John, two of the other disciples, of course we just read, they ran themselves to see for themselves. And it was open. They looked inside and the body was gone. There were just these grave clothes left behind, something grave robbers wouldn't normally typically do. And John believed, and that's all we're told at this point. That's all we're told at this point. But we are told in verse 9, if you look down at verse 9, that they didn't understand from the scriptures, that's from the Old Testament, the promise that Jesus would rise from the dead. They then go back to where they were staying, and the camera focuses now very much on Mary. And what is Mary doing in verse 11? Mary stood outside the tomb, crying. Of course she was crying. She had lost the one person who had meant everything to her, that she was devoted to, who had changed her life. She'd hoped that Jesus would have turned out to be God's promised Messiah, a promise in the Old Testament of a king who would come to set them free, to give them peace and joy and life. But he died. He died on Friday. And all those hopes were dashed. And now the body is stolen. She's heartbroken. And we're meant to feel the intensity of that. And we understand it. Gavin, let's have our next slide. You'll know the, next one. You know there's the famous artist, John Constable, very famous in this area, Flatford Mill, etc. He lost his young wife, Maria. She was just 41. And he wrote to his brother Golding these words in 1928. Hourly do I feel the loss of my departed angel. The face of the world is totally changed to me. And many of us know that loss, don't we? We know what it means to lose a little guinea pig, a loving dog, a family member, a friend. And the house is quiet. The chair is empty. There's no familiar voice. And everything changes. The world has changed to me. And that's why I really, connect with Mary. It makes sense, her grief. And that is why, just bring the slide down there, Gavin, thanks. The next part is such a shock. If you look down with me at verse 12, just the end of verse 11. As she wept, she bent over to look into the tomb and saw two angels in white seated where Jesus' body had been, one at the head and the other at the foot. She sees these heavenly messengers and she hears a heavenly question, why are you crying? Now that might seem to you and I massively insensitive. It's actually a gentle rebuke. Is this the time and the place for tears is really the question. And that only makes sense with the next shock that Mary receives. Let's read on verse 13. "They've taken my Lord away," she said, "and I don't know where they've put him." At this she turned round and she saw Jesus standing there, but she did not realize it was Jesus. Well, this is just peculiar, isn't it? But she sees this person face to face. We mustn't judge Mary and think, well, she must have been pretty thick not to recognize the person she'd spent years with. But it wasn't like that. So many people who saw Jesus after his resurrection did not recognize him initially. There was something radically different about his resurrection body, and yet familiar. And he speaks. "Why are you crying? Who is it you are looking for?" You know, that question hit me like a thunderbolt this week. Who are you looking for? I don't think it's like our quiz, give the name. Oh, I'm looking for Jesus. It's deeper. He's asking her to reflect, what kind of Messiah were you expecting? Were you just expecting a great teacher, a moral guide, a military or political superhero who would one day inevitably die? If that's what you were thinking, your vision is far too small. I think it's a searching question. Who are you looking for? All of us in life seek someone to inspire us, to guide us, to give us something to live for. Someone who offers us hope. A mum, a dad, a friend, maybe a teacher, or some celebrity, or someone that you think, I want to be like that. And most of the time, Jesus is not on that list of people that we're looking for. It may be that you believe in Jesus at some point as a child, but then something happened, and you just think it wasn't worth it. Or like the lady we saw in the video last week who was really interested to see if there is a God, then her friend developed cancer, and she ends up saying, well, that God stuff isn't for me. It can't make any difference. And thankfully, that did change for her. But I want to ask a question. What happens when our heroes can't give us all that we need? Or when they disappear one day? I think it's legitimate to reflect, have I found someone in life big enough to make sense of life and to take me safely through death itself? Who are you looking for? Asked Jesus. It's a good question, actually, for some of us here who actually do trust in Jesus and follow him, because we can even find that the knocks of life, the disappointments, the sadnesses, the losses, can fill the horizon so much that our view of Jesus shrinks and becomes very, very small. And we think he can't really make any difference, and it's always going to be like this. Life is a cycle of joy and then sadness. And I'm sure Mary would have reflected later and said, that's exactly what I thought until everything changed. Until Jesus said one word. Did you spot what that word was? Thinking he was the gardener, she said, Sir, if you've carried him away, tell me where you put him, and I will get him. And Jesus said to her, Mary. Mary. And what she heard there was the familiar voice and the personal name. And in that moment, her eyes were opened. And all her sadness was swept away. She realized that here was Jesus standing in front of her. I mean, most of us only ever dream of that, don't we? We dream of just one more day, one more moment with the person we've lost. And our minds play tricks on us. After my mum died, I was upstairs and someone rang on the bell, and Lisa, my wife, answered it and said very excitedly, Aëlla, come down. And as I was running down, my mind began to think, when I get to that door, I'm going to see it's my mum and my dad and my sister who've all gone. But we know it can't happen. But something did happen that Easter morning. Something far greater. Mary met Jesus, risen from the dead, the only one in history to pass through the grave clothes, spices and all, who stood there in a resurrection body, never to die again, bigger, greater than she'd ever imagined. The Lord is risen. He's risen indeed. Hallelujah. But what does it mean? Why does it matter? That's what we're going to think about in just a moment. But we are, in true fashion, going to take an interval break. And 30 seconds, timer. There is. Actually, I couldn't find one that timed. Anyway, so there is 30 seconds. So just for 30 seconds, take a breather, chat to the person, say hello next door if you want to, have a stretch, and then we'll come back because I'm going to see something very exciting, I hope. Thanks, Isaac, very much indeed. So I think we're meant to imagine that at this stage, Mary is so blown away that she's fallen down at Jesus' feet and is holding on. I guess probably thinking, I really hope this is another dream. Do not let this be a dream, as she sees Jesus. And Jesus says to her, do not, verse 17, do not hold on to me, for I've not yet returned to the Father. Now, he's not telling her off. It might sound strange. It's actually reassurance. This is not a dream. What you see in front of you is not a ghost. I'm not about to leave and ascend to my Father in heaven. You don't need to cling on as if I were. But instead, she's told in verse 17 to go and tell, Jesus says to go and tell my brothers, that's the other disciples, and tell them I am returning to my Father and your Father, to my God and your God. Now, the big picture here is that when Jesus rose from the dead, he didn't then hang around for the next 2,000 years, quite obviously, but returned to his Father in heaven. The ascension is the idea of a king who's won a victory, who then, after the battle, sits down on his throne in triumph, and Jesus' throne is in heaven, so he returns back there 40 days later. Now, the key thing is, what is the victory that he's won? And it's there in verse 17. Just notice the pronouns. I am returning to my Father and your Father, to my God and to your God. In other words, Jesus' resurrection life has made a way for them to share in his life, in this new relationship with God that just wasn't possible before. And it is really mind-blowing that the story of the Bible, it is a story, by the way. It's not just a collection of random sayings. It has a beginning and a middle and an end. And it begins with God creating people to live and know and enjoy him. And not just to walk around, but it's profoundly relational. To find all our significance and satisfaction and security in him, to love him. And only then to properly love each other. But when you look at the world today, we have to say it's not like that. It's very easy, isn't it, to point at other people and say it's all their fault. But if I'm really honest and look inside my own life, for many years, I treated God as if he was nothing. For 21 years, I didn't want him. I never thanked him. I only blamed him when things went wrong. I just wanted life on my terms, the way I wanted to live it. Can you imagine, though, if you treated a parent like that, or a spouse, or a friend? Imagine you never spoke to them again and ignored them. Can you imagine the damage it would do to the relationship? It'd be broken, wouldn't it? It would spoil everything. What then happens if we do that to the God who's only ever loved us and given us life? It spoils everything. You know, our lovely son Tom, when he was very small, we lost him for 20 minutes. About 20 minutes, I think, but it felt like 20 hours because he was in the house playing and then just disappeared. And the door was open in the garden, but the garden gate was locked and the front door was locked. And Lisa and I looked everywhere for him, and we literally could not find him. He wasn't behind a curtain. He wasn't anywhere. And I was just reaching for the phone to speak to the police And out of the recycling box popped this red face. Surprise! He wasn't really lost, but when you're a parent, you think, like, where is he? You care deeply. And God sees a world that is lost. And it really does matter. It does matter. You see, if it is true that there is God who made us from himself, if we insist on going our own way, at the end of our lives, God must honor that decision. If we don't want him in life, we can't have him in eternity. He's a God of justice and cares about what we've done to his world. We're all part of it. It's not just Donald Trump. And yet God loves us so much that he sent his own son, Jesus, to make a way home for us. Let me just show you this quick picture here. Thanks, Gavin. Okay, now this is a young Romanian man, a young boy there. His name is Kristen. He's at their top left as well. He was the only one who could fit into a narrow pipe that was only less than half a meter diameter and dropped down 40 feet. He volunteered to be put down that pipe head first with a rope tied to his feet. Why on earth would he do that? Because a 3-year-old toddler had climbed to that hole and dropped all the way through to the bottom. And 11 hours later, the rescue services gave up and said, we cannot get that boy out in time. And then Kristen was the only one. And he went down and he grabbed him and he pulled him out. And it was an amazing moment. And I'm just trying to illustrate for you that when Jesus came, he didn't come to ask us to be better people or to somehow change and try harder to get closer to God. He came to save us, to go head first into the darkest tunnel possible when he died on the cross on Good Friday. That's what Good Friday is, when Jesus died on that cross, not for anything that he had done, but for us. For Aëlla Gage's sin and yours, our guilt, our punishment fell on him so that God's justice could be done, and yet we could be forgiven. And on the third day, Jesus smashed a hole through death itself when he rose to life. And he did it so that we could come home to the God who loves us as his loved children. That is an amazing God. And that is who Mary met that Easter, far bigger than she'd ever imagined. And let me just say 3 things as I finish. If the resurrection is true, it means there isn't one life. How often we say, I've only got one life. Jesus begs to differ. There is an eternity to face. If the resurrection is true, God is not a distant tyrant in the sky, but a God who sees you, who knows you by name, and has sent his Son to save you and die for you. And he invites us to trust in him and begin this new relationship with him where we have a new identity, a new future, a new security, a new purpose. It is a wonderful gift this Easter. And thirdly, if the resurrection is true, it means that everything's going to be okay. Of course, there are going to be tears in this life, and there are tears. We lost our dog 3 weeks ago. I haven't stopped crying ever since, so I'm probably so emotional today. But there will be tears. But remember Jesus' question. Who are you looking for? Make your vision of Jesus so much bigger. He is the dying, rising, ascending, returning King of Kings. And the Bible actually ends on a great note, a note of God establishing a new world where there won't be one single teardrop, no regrets, no sadness, no pain. For the old order of things will have passed away. And he's going to get us there. That's his promise. He will not leave us behind. Corrie ten Boom, who was a very famous Holocaust survivor, knew a lot of suffering in her life, once said this: "When a train goes through a dark tunnel, you don't throw away the ticket and jump off. You sit still and you trust the engineer." And we can trust him to get us to that future. But that life begins now, and it's his promise to us because of his resurrection. Trust him. And if you've never considered Jesus, I hope it helps. I hope you might begin to think, could this actually be true? Let me finish with a letter that was sent to me 39 years ago. Can you believe that? Yes. A long time ago. Here it is. I was turning 21, and what you want on your 21st birthday is a nice shirt, something cool to wear, something good to go and do. But my uncle sent me his massive Bible. And I was far away from God. I was an atheist. I didn't believe in God. I wasn't interested. He sent it to me, and he sent this letter. It's very hard to read, isn't it? But I know off by heart, so I'm going to read it. Here it is anyway. He said this: "My dear Aëlla, an unusual present, but I want you to have something permanent on your birthday. Between the pages of this blessed book, you will find the answer to every problem in life. May you be blessed by it. With love, Malcolm." And he put a verse on there, Matthew 11:28-30, where Jesus says, "Come to me, all you are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest." And I want to extend that invitation to you because it turned out to be wonderfully true. I want to encourage you to read the account of Jesus' life, to maybe come along to Christianity Explored and just check it out, to meet the true Jesus who changed Mary, who's changed millions of people over the centuries, who turned sadness to joy and death to life forever. And that's why it is a very, very happy Easter. Thank you so much for listening. Can I pray briefly? And then we're going to finish. Thank you, Lord, so very much that you care deeply about our lives, that Jesus' death and his resurrection prove that you are concerned and that you've done everything necessary to give us life and hope and joy. Please help us as we think about Jesus, how big he is, how significant he is, and like Mary, to put our trust in him. For Jesus' sake, amen.